Hey guys, welcome back. Jeb Smith here, real estate broker in Southern California. Tonight we are going to be answering, or I'm going to be answering your questions live about the real estate business. I know in the past we've had Josh on, we've talked finance, we've talked loan programs, etc. I'm happy to talk about that information, but really want to focus tonight on the real estate side, helping buyers, helping sellers answer their questions. And while I know some of you are watching on Facebook, some of you are watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that like button if you like the content. While we're watching it, post your questions. I mean, that's where, this is valuable. That's how, I'm able to answer your questions and provide you with the information that you want to know because you're putting your questions out there. But it usually takes a couple minutes for people to actually come on and start asking questions. So I'm going to start today just talking about things I've talked about in other videos, but essentially what I'm seeing in the real estate market right now. Now, a lot of you know I'm located in Southern California, Huntington Beach to be exact. That's Orange County. And, it's a tough market. It's a very, very tough market. It's very good for sellers, but it's a difficult market for buyers. And if you're a seller and you're also a buyer, it's somewhat of a catch-22 because, it's really good on one side of the equation and tough on the other side of the equation. And it really doesn't matter what price range you're in, because I'm seeing, this situation on all sides, whether it's in the lower price points, and lower for us is something under 500,000 to 600,000 here. I know that seems crazy for a lot of you spread across the United States, but that's our lower price point. And our luxury market, which is, can be upwards of, 10, 15, 20 million, depending on where you are in Orange County, is still starting to move as well. And what we're seeing is buyers, it's tough. It's, we're having to put in multiple offers for very well qualified buyers. These aren't buyers who have no down payments or low credit scores or, aren't qualified. These are buyers who are qualified to purchase property, and they're still putting in multiple offers, a lot of times having to go over the asking price, and in a lot of cases not getting the property. And so what I want to tell you, if you're a buyer out there and you're considering purchasing right now, thinking about the process, make sure you've done the pre-approval. Make sure you've actually been formally pre-approved. Don't just go online and get the basic pre-approval where you put in just a little bit of information and it generates, a pre-qual letter. You need to speak to a lender, provide tax returns, provide all of your account information to make sure you're ready to go, not only for your sake, but for your agent's sake and for the potential seller on the other side when making that offer, because there's a lot of emotion involved. You want to make sure that if you're making offers, you're qualified to do that, because I've been on, in the scenario where we've made offers for buyers who we thought were qualified and it didn't work out. And we've also been in situations where we thought people were qualified, we made offers, and come to find out they hadn't formally gone through the process. So not only did they have to do that, it kind of delayed us in getting the ball started. And right now, with the market being hot, we've really got to put our best foot forward in doing that. And, I'll answer some questions here in just a minute. And if you're a seller and you have to sell to buy a property, make sure your agent, whoever it is that you're working with, actually knows that you're actually, you're out buying property. I've had a couple of scenarios right now where I've been not blindsided, but, past clients have reached out to me saying, hey, look, I found a new house that I want to buy, and their house needs to sell in order to buy that property. So it's a contingent offer. And in this market, yes, we can get your property sold relatively quickly, but it's tough because you're also in the position where you have to buy something. So you're behind the 8 ball in a sense, and it makes it tough to, get your offer accepted in some cases if your property's not in escrow. And so I would tell you, if you're out looking at property, just make sure, your agent knows so that they can kind of give you an idea of what you should be doing up front so that you're not in that position when you do find the right property where you can't make an offer or not in a position to actually, be competitive with your offer. So a lot of you guys are saying good evening, Jennifer. And so I've got a question on mortgage payments gone up after forbearance. So why have mortgage payments gone up after forbearance? So I'm not exactly sure what you're asking there. The only thing I can tell you is that, when you're doing mortgage forbearance is one of those options that you were able to delay mortgage payments for a certain period of time. Because of COVID, it was part of the CARES Act. And so you're given certain repayment options when the end of forbearance happens. And one of those repayment options is that you're able to defer. You're able to take that full amount that you missed and defer it to the back of the loan, not make any payments, and pick up where you left off. Not everyone is going to qualify for that. But some of the other options are setting up some sort of repayment plan where you pay those missed payments over a period of time. Again, not everyone's going to qualify for that either. And so another option is loss mitigation options or restructuring of your loan options. And that could be what you're talking about. And so in those cases, if you don't qualify for the deferment or the repayment option, your lender may alter your loan terms. They may change something in your loan terms. Of course, you would know because you would have to sign off on it in order to restructure your loans. I can't imagine your payment going up in those cases. A lot of times, they would alter your loan where it would benefit you. The only way I can see something going up is if you did a repayment plan and they're adding those missed payments into your current mortgage payment until it's repaid. So I hope that is helpful. Alejandro's asking, what steps do I need to take if I want to rent my current home and buy a new one? You need to speak to a lender, right? I actually have that scenario right now. Reached out to a client reached out to me yesterday. We went and looked at a property. They're in a position where they can actually keep their current property and buy another property. So they're not contingent on buying another property, having to sell the property that they live in now. They want to rent it out. So, we talked about that. They're still unsure of what they want to do, whether they want to sell it and or rent it out. But we talked about rental amounts, what we thought it could rent for. Because the lender is going to need that in order to qualify you. Now, a lender's only going to use 75% of those rents on the property. So, hypothetically, you're able to rent your home for $2,000 a month. The lender's only going to give you $1,500 of that rent towards, the calculations in order to qualify. So if your payment on your current mortgage is less than $1,500, then you're going to have some positive cash flow. If it's more than $1,500, you might be upside down a little bit on that payment, and the lender needs to factor that in when qualifying you for the new purchase. So speak to a lender. That's where you need to start on that. What's my take on buying some properties in not so good areas like Camden, New Jersey? Most people are talking about there will be many opportunities out there. Unfortunately, Rob, I don't know the Camden, New Jersey area well enough to give you any advice on the market out there. Out here in Southern California, the areas that were not so good, say 5 years ago, 7 years ago, have been somewhat gentrified over the last couple of years, and property values in those areas have gone up. So if there's an opportunity, you think there's an opportunity for those areas to be regentrified, businesses to go in, the areas to, flourish at some point in the future, it could be a good opportunity. I mean, a perfect example is Detroit. 10 years ago, actually we were talking about this a week ago. Josh and I were talking about this a week ago. One of his friends bought a couple of properties in Detroit back in 2011, I think for $5,000 or $10,000 at the time because of what the city was doing. Those properties are now worth $80,000, $90,000. And at the point that he bought them back then, he was able to rent them immediately. And so, in the right opportunity, the right market, right area, it could be a great opportunity. It could be a great opportunity. And I think long term, it's definitely a great strategy. You just need to make sure that, the areas have some sort of appreciation in the future or a great rental value, and you understand what you're buying. So Sonny's asking, what type of tax write-off can I get for rental properties? So, your tax, your CPA, whoever it is that does your taxes, is going to do normal write-offs on your taxes. So, you can, the normal tax write-off. So you'll get property tax write-offs. You might get a mortgage, a principal interest deduction. So depending on what state you're in, what area you're in, you might be capped on how much you can actually write off on rental property. So you might cap out depending on how many rental properties you have, but essentially that's what you're writing off, along with maybe you're receiving less rent than you pay on the property. That might be a deduction as well. So let's go down to, agueybana is asking, can escrow be it? I'm not sure what you mean by that. So why have mortgage payments gone up after forbearance? Can escrow be it? Potentially, yeah. So if you missed your, if you weren't paying property taxes and insurance as part of, when you went into forbearance, if you were only paying, if you weren't paying anything, not even your property tax and interest, property taxes and insurance on the property, then yes, that might have gone up, right? Because those accounts need to be replenished. So if you're impounding your taxes and insurance, that could be one of the reasons that that your payment went up. Lucas is saying, a new build closing mid-December, requested a rate lock and did 90-day lock at 2.875. Do you think I'm okay, since I'm not sure what's going to happen with rates later on? I think if you're locking in a 2.875% interest rate, I think that's a solid rate, for anyone. Could rates go down? Of course they could. But if they do, and it's low enough for it makes sense for you to refinance, then great. You're able to take advantage of it. If rates go up, you're going to be happy that you locked a rate, right? I mean, what we always say is a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So basically, what the market is now, what the rates are now. If you're comfortable with that rate, with that payment, it makes sense to lock it in. I mean, there's no sense in trying to, catch a falling knife, if you will, and try to pick the bottom on interest rates. I mean, 2.875 is a solid rate. If I told you a year and a half ago that you could have gotten that, you would have thought I was crazy. So I think long term, you're in a good position there. So the economy falling or not, I'm trying to buy, putting 170,000 down. Is that a good down payment, or nothing is certain? So really depends. I mean, depending on what your purchase price is, what the price of the property you're trying to buy will depend on whether $170,000 down is a good down payment. If you're buying a $500,000 home, yeah, that's a great down payment. If you're buying a $1.7 million house, not so much, right? So it's going to depend on where you're buying, how much you're spending, et cetera. But what I would tell you more so than anything, I mean, outside of trying to be competitive in writing an offer, in making your offer look advantageous to the seller on the other side, your down payment is not really that important to anyone other than you and to your lender, right? Your lender more so, because your interest rate is based off, your down payment, or one of the factors on your down payment, and you, because your monthly payment is going to be based off of that down payment. So if you're comfortable with the monthly payment that you're getting, I wouldn't necessarily worry what other people think is a good down payment or not. I mean, you've got to focus on you. And in your case, you're saying here that it's a $300,000 purchase price. So at a $300,000 purchase price, $170,000 down is a solid down payment. I mean, that's over 50% of the balance of the property that you're looking to purchase. So yeah, in any market, that's a solid down payment. And now next thing is, are you comfortable with the monthly payment? If so, then it seems like a good deal. It just basically there's no surefire way in this market to really get your offer accepted. So the larger down payment you have, the better credit scores you have, the better your agent and mortgage broker are to be able to convey that to the other side, the better off you are in making an offer. So I hope that was helpful. Sonny's asking, current 30-year and 15-year fixed rates with no points. So you probably know this by now if you've been watching videos, which I know you have, Sonny, because I see your comments. I'm not a licensed mortgage broker, loan officer at this time, right? I have an NMLS ID, but I'm not current on my education because I don't do loans anymore. I don't feel the need to stay current on that sort of thing. So I can't really quote interest rates. But what I can tell you in talking to, lenders and what have you, and what I'm hearing is that, 30-year fix somewhere in the high 2% range. 15-year fixed, not 100% sure because I haven't heard lately, but rates are still really, really competitive. I mean, I think you can definitely get something in the twos right now, and likely will be able to for some time. Nicole is asking, W-2 job, also have a side 1099 gig. Can I use this income? Last year I had a business loss because of all the upstart costs, but this year I have positive income. Thanks. So what a lender is going to want to see in most cases where you have a 1099 income in addition to a W-2, or even in some cases where you go from, W-2 to a 1099 job, they're going to want to see history of this. Generally, it's 2 years. Sometimes you can run this thing through one of the automated underwriting engines out there. They call them desktop underwriter. Fannie Mae is LP, and they will come back and say that they only need 1 year of tax returns. In that case, if you have 1 year, you might be able to qualify with that 1099 income. But in most cases, you're going to need 2 years history of it, especially if you showed a loss the year before, because once they look at your 2 years tax returns, in most cases, they're going to see that you had a loss and then you went to a positive income. They're going to want to see some history of you making that income in order to use it, in order to help you qualify. Now, if you don't need that 1099 income to qualify, only your W-2 income, it doesn't really matter. You can just use the W-2, but for 1099, you're going to need a history of it. Agueybana, how can I lower my mortgage payments? How can I lower my monthly mortgage payments? Well, you can do one of two things. You can refinance to a lower rate in most cases. You could sell your house and buy another one with a smaller mortgage. You could pay down the mortgage, and in some cases, your loan will reset depending on who the lender is. But other than that, you don't really have a lot of options. Your other option would be if you have an impound account where your tax and insurance are there, you might be able to cancel that impound account and lower your monthly mortgage payment, but you're still going to have to pay those property taxes and insurance at some point in the future. Other than that, there's not really a lot of options out there. You could go to an adjustable rate mortgage, but with rates being where they are right now, it doesn't make sense to do adjustable rate mortgages. I would definitely stick with a 30-year fixed. So there's not really a lot of options other than refinancing and trying to lower your payment. What do I think my chances of getting approved for FHA loan if you are retirement age with 20% down? So the age is irrelevant in most cases. So your age isn't going to play a factor as far as you qualifying for loan. In most cases, it's all based on income, whether it's FHA, conventional, what have you. So if you're able to show enough income in order to qualify for the loan, so your debt to income ratio meets the lender's guidelines, then you shouldn't have any issues buying a property. Now, you can use Social Security income, you can use pension, you can use any retirement income. If you take dividends, or if you have some history of dividends with your stock accounts or what have you, those are things you can use for income. Now, if you're retirement age and you have no income at all and you only have a down payment, you're going to have issues qualifying in most cases. There are lenders out there that will do loans for you based on assets. But I don't think we're talking about that at this time. FHA is not one of those types of loans. So you're going to need income in order to qualify. It doesn't matter if you're retired or not. You just have to meet those debt to income ratios. So they're going to look at the income. They're going to look at your debts. They're going to calculate what your DTI is with your current debt and the new mortgage. And if you meet guidelines, then you're good to go. So hope that was helpful. Sonny's asking, do I cover South Riverside County? I personally don't really go outside of Orange County too much. I do in some cases, but I'm local to Orange County, so that's where my bread and butter is. That's the market I know. Long Beach, I know Long Beach, so I'll venture up into Long Beach. But if you're asking me to help you buy a property out in that area, I'm not your guy. I can definitely refer you to somebody out there. I know a lot of good agents in that area, in San Diego and LA, that I can pass you along to, but I would be doing you a disservice in most cases if I were to take you out to that market, show you around. Now, if you knew the exact property you wanted to purchase, and wanted me to negotiate and that sort of thing, then that's another story. But if, you want me showing you property, asking about schools and all of that, then, I would say find a local expert. Just like I would tell you if you were, buying in Orange County and you had, an agent from another area, make sure you're working with a local expert, especially right now. We don't have a lot of questions coming in at the moment, so we've answered most of them. But what I would tell you in today's market, because of where, buyer demand is, and inventory levels are super low, that working with a pro right now on the mortgage, on the real estate side is very, very important. Because not only do you need somebody negotiating on your behalf that knows what they're doing, that has some experience, but you need to try to work every single angle in this market if you're a buyer to get your offer accepted in most cases, without overpaying, right? Anybody can overpay for a property and get it accepted in most cases. But the idea is that you don't want to overpay for a property. You don't want to offer way more than the last guy, or in a competitive offer situation where there's multiple offers. You don't want to be the one just throwing out some high number and getting your offer accepted. You need a pro that can kind of walk you through options and guide you through that process. So that's important in that process. So Rob's asking about putting rental properties into LLCs. Are there more tax benefits in doing that? I'm not going to get into that question, Rob. Sorry, because I'd be doing a disservice in answering that, because I honestly don't know all the ins and outs of putting a property into an LLC. I mean, it protects you in some cases where you were in a lawsuit or what have you. The LLC owns the property, not you, so you're protected in those cases. Outside of that, I'm not 100% sure the reasons for putting properties into LLCs unless you own it with multiple people, and or you own a lot of property. In that case, if you own one or two properties, I'm not sure it benefits you to do an LLC. But again, like I mentioned, I'm not the guy to be answering that. Definitely a tax person is a better person to address that. Paperwork. Is there any paperwork that needs to be signed off before a real estate agent starts helping? Not really. Some agents require a buyer broker agreement. What that is it's a document that ties the buyer to the agent. And agents do that because they don't want to, go out, start helping a buyer, and then that buyer decides to just go to a seller or another agent and write an offer with them when they've been doing all the work, trying to get them in the market and what have you. So that would be the only document that you really need to sign in order to start working with an agent. With that said, I have never had a buyer broker agreement signed in my life, in my career. I've been doing this 18 years. I've never had one signed. It's not that I don't believe in them. I just choose to run a business where, I trust that the people I'm working with want to work with me. And I'd rather do business like that. My business is mostly relational. It's 90% relational, which means most of my business comes from past clients, friends, and family. I don't pay for leads. I don't market online. Well, this is marketing online, but I don't pay for, that sort of thing. Right. So most of my business comes from relationships. So I kind of have a relationship with a lot of people, but in some cases, I've been burned in that. So I have lost deals where people have gone out and done other things. But with that said, I don't believe in them. I don't do them, but that would be the only thing that you need, might need to get signed in order to start working with a real estate agent. So hopefully, again, helpful. Rob's asking again about, buying properties with business credit for long-term rentals. You're going to probably have, residential property, you're going to have issues probably buying with some sort of business credit. I'm not seeing it here in California. In some cases you might see that, but we're not really seeing it here where people are using business credit in order to buy property. So Julie, she has a larger down payment. She's read where lenders are shying away from $60K or less loans. She may only need a $40,000 loan. Do you have any experience with this? So yes, I mean, I don't necessarily have the experience with it, but what you're saying, there is some truth to that. A lot of lenders out there don't want to do small loans. In California, we don't typically see loans of that size. So it's hard for me to answer that question, but I do remember back in the day when I was actually doing loans, and I would get a client that wanted to do a small loan like that. And it was difficult at that time to find lenders that would actually do it. So to answer your question, yes, that might be a scenario, but I would tell you that there's plenty of lenders out there that will do it. So, just make sure you're talking to a couple of different people, finding out your best options. No different than getting any other loan, right? Just make sure you're checking and seeing what options you have. Can you use an escalation clause to help a buyer win a bid, I assume? How often are they used? Very often in today's market. If you have an agent that knows what they're doing. They're not meant to be used on every property in most cases, right? So what is an escalation clause? A lot of people are probably asking that question at the moment. What's an escalation clause? An escalation clause is one where you are able to make an offer. For example, let's say a property is listed for $600,000 and you're making an offer and you say, I'm willing to offer you $600,000. So you're offering what the seller is asking, but you add this escalation clause as part of the contract. And in that escalation clause, you might say something like, buyer willing to pay $1,000 higher than the highest offer up to $615,000, right? So basically what you're telling the seller is, hey, this is my offer, $600,000, but I'm willing to go up to this price or $1,000 higher than this price up to this amount. So there's a cap on it where you would get capped out, 615 in this case. So if somebody wrote an offer at 616, your offer wouldn't escalate past the 615, right? And a lot of people would say, well, you're showing your cards up front. How, they're just going to come in and show you an offer or tell you they have an offer at 614. That way you're pushed up to 615. Yes, they could do it. It's completely unethical to do that. But in most cases, we're asking for the seller to provide proof that, there was another offer at that price so that we know the escalation clause is legit. And in those cases, I'm actually calling the agent on the other side saying, hey, did your client make an offer on this property? Yes, blah, blah, blah. And we're having that conversation. So to answer the question, yes, escalation clauses are being used a lot, especially in a market like this with multiple offers. People are overbidding on the price. It's a good way to get your offer accepted. But in some cases, it's a good way to overpay for a property if you're not careful on your limit that you set. So keep that in mind if you are in the position where you're making an offer, you're against multiple offers, you're putting the escalation clause as part of the contract. It could turn out to bite you. So, in addition to that, I'm going to tell you a couple of things here. If you're a buyer and you're thinking about buying a property, escalation clause is one of those things that you could use. If your agent doesn't know about an escalation clause, find a new agent. No, but you could brief them on what an escalation clause is. But most of the pros out there in the business that have been doing this some time are aware of what an escalation clause is, how to use it. If they're not, just brief them on it. They should be able to do some research and help you with that. But that would be a way to help your offer stand out. Some other things, if you're a buyer, you're writing a love letter to the seller. I've said this in multiple videos. What is a love letter to the seller? You're telling them about you, telling them about your family, telling them what you love about the property. In a lot of cases, you're providing a picture of you and your family. Maybe you're a video of you and your family, telling them what you love about the property, whatever. You need to make your offer stand out in this market. That's one way to do it, is just, provide something that everybody else isn't doing. A lot of people are doing the love letter in this market. I would still encourage you to do it, even if you're not, quote unquote, a writer. Your agent in most cases probably has some idea of what to do in order to help you get past that. But outside of that, it's going to come down to price, down payment, escalation clauses. What can you do to stand out? That's how you're going to get your offer accepted in this market. Al is asking, what happens when a buyer says they are using conventional loan but change the FHA once they accept your offer and you are an escrow? So technically it's a breach of contract, right? So in the contract you put initially, one of the things that you fill out is what type of loan you're doing. There's a box to check if you're using FHA. So if you go into the offer, this is no different than saying you're making a cash offer and then you end up getting a loan, right? It's the same exact thing. You're basically changing the terms of the contract. So the seller has to agree to it. If the seller does not agree to it, then essentially your offer could fall apart. But in some cases, you're able to change your offer from conventional to FHA. So, it's one of those that you're going to have a conversation with your realtor up front, ask them how they should structure it. Unfortunately, a lot of sellers, a lot of agents in this market are looking down on FHA and VA offers just because of the down payments. They think these people are less qualified. In some cases, they are. I mean, there's some truth to that. But FHA loans are usually easier to qualify for than conventional, and so likely less likely to fall apart. So, when I'm talking to clients, I don't, usually that's not a point of our conversation and talking about, you shouldn't accept this offer because it's FHA or VA or what have you. It's exactly the opposite. We're talking about all the terms of the contract and making the best decision from there. It's really who can close the deal on time. Who do we trust to get it done based on those qualifications? But I know that's a little off topic there, Al, but it's a breach of contract to answer the question. But can you do it? In some cases, yes. But you need to be forthright up front and so that everybody knows exactly what's going on, because there's additional disclosures, there's additional things that need to be signed by the seller when doing FHA. It's a different appraisal process, so on and so forth. So everybody needs to be on the same page. Liz is asking, do I recommend any home insurance companies? Is it needed before closing the deal? Yes, you have to have homeowners insurance before closing a property. Lenders won't allow you to close a property without homeowners insurance. In the case that you buy a house cash, you can close it without homeowners insurance. Not smart to do that in case there's a fire or something major happens. So yes, you need homeowners insurance. Do I recommend a company? No, not really. Go with the most competitive people out there, right? Find a broker who can shop rates for you and test different different companies against one another to find out who has the best premium based on what you're trying to accomplish. Now, I do know that I'm trying to think who it is. I think Navy Fed, one of the credit unions out there. I can't think of who it is. It's not USAA. Sorry, not Navy Fed. USAA is really competitive on homeowners insurance, but you have to have an account with them and so on and so forth. So outside of that, no one I really recommend. Love letters discriminate. So that not necessarily. I'm not sure what you mean by discriminate. Love letters don't discriminate, right? So if your love letter could discriminate, but it doesn't. I mean, you're offering something up about you and your family, and trying to entice the emotional side of the seller, right? You don't have to provide a picture, so there's no way they would discriminate not knowing what you look like. They might discriminate based on how you wrote the letter, but that's not likely. In most cases, you just want to set yourself apart, right? You want to tie into the emotional side of the seller, in order to stand out. That's how you get offers accepted in this market, like it or not. When does a seller need to move out during escrow? It depends on what was negotiated in the contract, Al. So in most cases, it's, if you ask a 30-day escrow, unless you or the seller gives anything that alters that, it's a 30-day escrow, which means they need to be out of the property on the 30th day by 5 p.m. in most cases, which means that you would get the keys that day. In some cases, the seller asks for close of escrow plus 3 days. In some cases, the buyers give the seller close of escrow plus 3 days, which means they've got 30 days in the close of escrow if it was a 30-day escrow plus those 3 days to get out of the property. So it really just depends on what's negotiated as part of the contract. Been running into a lot of homes with PPA lease solar with 15 years, 28,000 left on an account. Yes, in California, we're seeing a lot of solar panels that are leased. And unfortunately, a lot of these don't pencil out in the equations, right? And so, the buyers either have to qualify to take over that lease, and, if they want to purchase that property, and or the seller has to pay it off. So it's not an ideal situation. I really shy people away from getting solar panels unless they're paid in full. So it's difficult. I've been in this scenario where I've had a property to sell and it still had a lease on it, and it was a complete nightmare. So, something to pay attention to. Too much to talk about here at the moment. So if you don't have family and they choose home without a family, so he's going back to the discriminate letter thing. So, again, you don't necessarily have to get into the family. You can talk about you and your dog, or you and your pet, or maybe you and your family that doesn't live with you. I mean, you don't have to tell them. You can tell them as much as you want. You can tell them nothing at all. Hell, you can make up the entire story if you want to stand out. I mean, I'm not telling you to do that, but you could in reality. So it's really about connecting with the seller. You know, maybe you walk through the house and find out they're a Carolina Tar Heel basketball fan, and you went to UNC, or you're one as well. That's something you can use to tie in. It's really just making a connection with the seller, regardless if it's family related, personal related, whatever it is. Just, you know, try to do something to help your offer stand out. Make that connection. It's all about that connection. How can you differentiate yourself from the next person, at least to be competitive? But I understand what you're saying. So, and he gets what I'm saying. So we're running at 35 minutes right now, guys. So I am going to wrap this up. I have a son at soccer practice that I have to get to. But I'm encouraging you, if you have additional questions, continue to put them in. I'll use them for our next live stream. And if you have, you know, topics you want me to cover, it's a good place to put it as well. And if you haven't done it already, hit that subscribe button. A lot of you, I got a couple people asking for contact information as well. I'll put my email up here if you want to reach out to me directly. Email is the best way. And when I respond to you, my phone number will be there as well. But, you know, reach out to me directly if you have questions. I'm happy. I have a lot of conversations with you guys daily on different topics. And these are a lot of times in people I can't help. I'm not helping you buy a house. I'm not helping you sell a house. You're in another state in some cases. So, you know, if you have questions, reach out. If you need a connection somewhere else, happy to help there as well. But either way, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. We will see you again soon. Have an awesome night. Bye-bye.